This comp is so broken if you know what you're doing. If you don't and you have never played Sorcs, quick rundown so you're caught up. Two ways to play Sorc, Emissary and 6 Sorc. You can't play 6 Sorc without a +1 unless you're playing into your strongest board. So if you're playing around an AP opener and you roll down and you hit 6 Sorc, stop rolling and stabilize. Later on, you do want to cap out with 4 Emissary, so hold the Trist on your bench because you don't want to be stuck on Trist jail at level 9. Of course, you can cap out in other ways with a 6 cost or a 2-star 5 cost with items, but 4 emissaries can. The standard version is pretty simple. You play around Swain 2 or Nami 2 and you try to 3-star one of them. 2 if you can, but most times you won't be able to. That's pretty much the basics of it. Let's get back to what you're doing wrong. The first thing you're doing wrong is playing the Zoe. She's a terrorist and she will hold your LP hostage. Why? Because as a 4 cost, she sucks. In this comp, she only has 6 Sorc activated and not Rebels. You want to hold items on any other unit. For instance, when you're playing towards a regular comp, you want to itemize Swain or Nami. This Zoe unit either leaves everyone at 1 HP or does 10k damage to a single unit with 1 HP, meaning her ability is wasted. Now here's why Swain is so much better. First of all, he only costs 9 gold and he's pretty easy to hit on 7 or 8. There's a very high chance you miss a 2-star 4 cost, but missing a 2-star 3 cost is a lot harder to do. Secondly, he uses all of his traits. Swain has 3 combat traits, and Zoe has 2. Swain uses all 3 of them in this comp, and Zoe uses only 1. If your entire comp is focused around one unit, and they're doing all the damage, you can't have him not have 1 combat trait. If I'm playing 6 Sorc and Zoe is my main damage, not having Rebels is like having 20% less power. Not only that, Swain's cast is so efficient. While Zoe might burst down units and overkill them or leave them alive and feed them mana, Swain will do perfect damage to everyone around him. If you're in a spot where you have no frontline, then yes, you have to use Swain as your frontline and put him up there. Now you can use Nami as your item holder because Nami gets Emissary in this comp. Both Form Swapper and Emissary is very good for this comp because they give you percentage damage. Percentage damage complements high stat comps very well. If you didn't know, there's 3 main ways to increase your damage output for any unit. Stats like AP and AD, for instance Sorcs, damage amp, which is anything with a percentage symbol, like Giant Slayer, Guardbreaker, or Form Swapper, and finally crit, which you can get from JG, IE, or Ambushers. Having said all that, you take a look at Zoe, and she's a 4 cost with none of those things going for her. And that brings us to our second point, wrong mentality. Here's some preconceptions you have to fix. 1, this is not a lose streak comp. 2, this is not a 4-2 comp. And 3, you're not playing around 4 costs. I think it's a very bad idea to lose streak into this comp. Any comp that has 3-star 3 costs as its win condition has to sit on those 2-star 3 costs as their board. That means until they hit their 3-star 3 costs, they're losing to all the 2-star 4 cost players. If you don't have that HP shield from win streaking and that money for that tempo, you're not going to have enough HP or time to hit your 3 stars and likely bot 4. Probably the worst thing you can do is try to 4-2 it from a lose streak. Pretend you're coming out of a loss streak and you're 4-2ing it. Your board is supported by 3 costs. So you're at like 50 HP, probably less, on 4-2, and you're rolling for a 3 cost board. Everyone else is rolling for a 4 cost board. Your board will cap out higher with the 3 stars, but you're not hitting 3 stars on 1 roll down. In fact, you're not going to hit 3 stars for maybe a stage and a half at best. So you're going to lose 50 HP, roll down like everyone else, and then lose to every single board because you're playing around 3 costs while they're playing around 4 costs. That's why you can't lose streak into this board, and generally 4-2 isn't the best time to roll. Remember, you're playing around Swain, who's a 3 cost. Rolling at 3-5 allows you to find 3 costs faster and earlier. I think the key to success for this comp is finding Swains early and taking them out of the pool. This is great against other comps and not just other Sorc contesters. Rolling at 3-5 also lets you stabilize earlier, meaning your duration where you're stable is longer, giving you more time and more gold. This gives you a greater chance to hit that Swain 3 or push levels. If you're rolling on 3-5, I think the best board generally looks like this. So you're playing around 4 Sorc, and you're playing around 2 Swains. So if you have a Swain 2 frontline or backline, and another Swain, usually a 1 star, you want that frontline or backline depending on your items. You're not rolling to 0 on 3-5, you want to stay above like 20 or 30, but you want to have a board that's stable. And if you're not win streaking into this spot, it's going to be pretty hard to do. Rolling on 7 gives you a high chance of hitting lucky units like Zoe for 6 Sorc, or at least for Black Rose. So for instance, instead of this board, if I hit Zoe, I'd play the 6 Sorc instead, or if I hit Elise, I'd play Black Rose instead, plus 4 Sorc. Now this doesn't always mean you have to roll at 3-5. A lot of times, I actually roll at 4-2 or even 4-5. It always depends on your spot and what's best for you in your current situation. And finally, the third one is itemization and how you're itemizing wrong. So it's a bit tricky, but bear with me because there's 4 units you can itemize in this comp. Your priority is going to be Swain or LeBlanc. So let's put them right here. But this will also depend on what items you have. So let's talk about units in general. So Swain is your best unit and the most consistent, but LeBlanc is also insanely broken, even though LeBlanc 1 is better than Zoe. But LeBlanc wants different items to Zoe, and what she really needs to break it down is attack speed. So I have 3 different attack speed items that are really good on her, but even things like QSS will work, especially if you have QSS like JG Guardbreaker. She doesn't really need crit, but she wants to have attack speed because during her cast she doesn't gain mana, so a lot of Shojin's power is wasted, and you want to have some benefit to attacking here. So for the most part, LeBlanc comes in later, so you can't get perfect items for her. But as long as you have like 1 attack speed item, you should be good. So Shojin plus Winsus or Nashers plus 1 more. Any damage amp like Guardbreaker, JG is fine for crits. Even like Archangels or Rabadons are decent on her. And I've even seen Gunblade do fine. Next, we'll move on to Nami and Zoe. So they're pretty similar. JG is actually pretty bad on both of these units, but a lot better on Nami than Zoe. So Zoe is known for missing her ults, or not missing, but wasting her damage on, or wasting her crits on units that are already dead, or not critting on units that need to be critted on. So JG just kind of sucks on her unless you have like JG Guardbreaker. That makes it slightly better, but even then, she runs the risk of overkilling. Nami and Zoe, don't worry about itemizing them perfectly. They're never meant to be itemized perfectly, and they can pretty much hold anything you want, as long as you have Shojin plus attack speed plus damage. So Swain is the perfect unit because his ability ignores the overkill that Sorcs have. So every Sorc unit, including like Zyra and Lux, they don't like having JG because they overkill and they waste their spell. But Swain, his spell shoots 8 crows at 3 different enemies. And all that damage is split between 8 crows, so it's really safe to not do overkill damage and make sure all his damage is super efficient. That's why his best build is actually JG and Guardbreaker. This itemization is super key if you want to win out with him because it amplifies his damage by so much. But don't try to greed these items. A lot of this comp wants to be tempoed, so slam whatever you have to and play your strongest comp. There's always a good chance that you will find your Guardbreaker and JG off carousel, and you can move these items to any of these 4 Sorc units you have. Remember, this comp only wins out once you have that 3-star Swain and that 2-star LeBlanc. So if you're still on 2-star Swain, don't even think about the win out. Just worry about top 4 first, and then you can focus on getting your top 2. So we're going to head over to a VOD recording of a Sorc game in a second, but right before that, I want to get in my last second tips and tricks for this comp. The first one is item economy for Shred. Spark is a lot better in this comp because Swain and LeBlanc, your main carries, attack the front line. But the more important issue is it uses Cloak and Rod, which you don't really care about in this comp. Cloak loses a lot of value after you make Spark, and Rod, believe it or not, has no real use outside of Spark and JG. Gunblade's nice, Rabadon's nice, Crown Guard's okay, and Archangels is just there, but none of those items are needed in this comp particularly. Static Shiv's components, on the other hand, are a lot more valuable. Obviously, Bow makes Red Buff, Nashers, and Giant Slayer, and Tyr makes Shojin, Adaptive, Morello, Vow, Hodge if you have JG, and generally is just a very valuable component. Tip number 2 is who holds Spark. Garen, your strongest tank, should always hold Spark, unless of course you somehow hit at least 2 before you hit Garen 2. Between Sunfire and Spark, the Shred is a lot more important, so make sure it stays the longest. Elise can hold mana items and your Sunfire. When I say mana items, I mean frontline mana items like Adaptive and Vow, but sometimes if you take a blue buff off Carousel and you have no one to use it on, she can hold it just fine. It gives you the exact same starting mana as Vow and lets her cast once or twice. And third, anomalies. Your anomaly always wants to go on Garen or Elise. Again, it's going to be on Garen because usually you have a Garen 2 before an Elise 2. All you really want are any tank ones. So if you go to Meta TFT, they have some good rated anomalies. Look for tank ones and find the best one here. So like Stone Skin is fine, Deep Root's great. Just don't take something in D tier like Defense Expert or Thorn Skin. Now finally, let's talk about 3-5 versus 4-2 roll downs. Please don't mindlessly roll at 3-5 every Sorc game just because you heard someone on YouTube say so. These are the guidelines, and you should be able to adapt based on your game situation. For instance, if my level 7 board is fully upgraded and I have one Swain with no pairs, I'm not going to roll there because my board is already strong and the value of me rolling is very low. The only thing I'm rolling there is for Swain 2, and I don't have a pair. The odds of me hitting that Swain without rolling very deep is not worth the econ risk. But let's say I have pairs on my bench, I go to level 7 and I have a free slot now, and there are units on my board that potentially can be replaced. For instance, let's say this Vlad was a Mumu 2 instead. Now I'm not just rolling for Swain, I'm rolling for 3 or 4 other reasons. My rolls are now higher quality, because the likelihood that my board gets upgraded is a lot higher. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, just think about it like this. Analyze your board and think about pairs, upgrades, ways your board can be upgraded. If you have 3 to 4 good reasons, then roll. But also evaluate those reasons. If I have a Lux and Zyra pair, that's not nearly a good enough reason as a Swain pair. Unfortunately, I don't think I can simplify this further without dedicating a whole video to this. So until I do, you're going to have to make the judgment call. What I can do is go through all the incentives of rolling at 7 for this line. So I'm not going to go over every possible opener for this comp, so let's stick with Sorcs because it's a pretty obvious one. This board right here is the board I kind of want to be on if I'm playing towards Sorc. I already have my 4 Sorc in, and I try to hit 2 copies of Swain, or if I can't, 4 Swains. So either my 2-star is frontline or it's backline, depending on what items and upgrades I have. So if I have 2-star Vlad and 2-star Darius with 3-item Vlad, then I'm definitely doing something like this. So rolling at 7 gives me my Swain odds, but also other 3 cost odds. So if I'm playing around 4 Watchers instead, and I'm not playing this, I have potential to find Scar 2. You're not actively looking for these guys, but if you see like a Rennie 2 shop, a Scar 2 shop, or a Loris 2 shop, consider holding them until your roll down is finished. All 3 of these slot really easily into your comp, and help stabilize your board for stage 4 or longer. So for Loris, you just play another Sentinel. It can be Irelia, it could be Alawi, it could be Rel for Conqueror. Scar is pretty simple, you already have the Watcher, and Rennie is a other bruiser. But to be honest, having your roll end with only a 2-star 3 cost, like Rennie, Scar, or Loris, isn't really a high roll. What you really want are the high roll parts for 4 costs. If you're rolling 5 times, not only are you rolling for your Swains and your 3 costs, but you're also rolling for the potential 4 cost chance. On level 7 over here, if you roll 10 gold, so 5 rolls, there's about a 20% chance you'll see at least 1 4 cost, and about a 2% chance you'll see 2. If any of those are your Elise, Zoe, or Garen, they make your board a lot stronger and open up potential lines. These 4 costs are especially valuable in this line because just having a single copy opens up so many strong traits. Garen gives you 4 Emissary. You need Zoe or the rare LeBlanc for 6 Sorcs. Now you're probably wondering about this Mundo here, and we'll get to that in a second. Because connected to this topic of rolling here are our outs, and what boards we can stabilize on. So we know our main 2 Sorc boards, right? 4 Emissary and 6 Sorc. But if we're contested, we can't expect to hit that every time. That's why I want to share some other outs you can play at level 8. So I'm going to start with the comp I rate the lowest, and that's because of my expectations towards Zoe. I'm only putting it here because I think this board looks fundamentally sound, and the players I got this information from are all high elo players that I've trust. Now, this doesn't have to be the best comp ever. This should be your 3rd or 4th option when playing towards this line, because its whole purpose is to save you. A lot of players lose a lot of LP because they hard force that 6 or 4 Sorc comp, and they refuse to hold anything else besides that. Sometimes they get lucky and they top 4, but most times they hit nothing because they skip past everything and they bought 4. And I think the second comp illustrates this concept very well. So this is a comp that uses Mundo as a frontline tank. Before this patch, there was no reason to ever play Mundo because he was the worst 4-cost tank. But after the armor buffs, it became more of a possibility. This was a comp I had in the back of my mind, but in truth, this board wasn't even going to make it to the video unless I had solid proof that it worked. And luckily, by chance, on my 2nd day of recording, I happened on this recommended video. So this video is a VOD review of a Japanese pro player, and the channel name is Mercurial L. So if you want to watch the entire video, I highly recommend going over to his channel, leaving a like, and maybe subscribing if you enjoy his content. I think I've subscribed recently to him, and I've been enjoying the things he posts. But in this particular VOD, he covers a Japanese pro player who plays a Sorc line, which covers the comp that I showed you. I think this video was such a great example to show players how to properly navigate the Sorc line. So I'm going to skip to some very important parts I want to highlight, but notice that he's playing towards Sorc from this spot, and his stage 4 is something that we want to particularly take a look at. So go further along, we can see that he wants to play towards your regular Sorc comp, right? He's looking for emissaries, and he wants to play either 6 Sorc or stabilize around 4 emissaries. When we do make it to stage 4 here, we're kind of low on HP, and we don't have that much gold. We have 30 gold on 4-2 when we do go to level 8, which is around the usual you should have, but it's not enough for you to pivot this comp off and play towards 4 emissary. So a mistake a lot of players try to do in this spot is they open sell a lot of their units like Mundo and Nunu, and they just try to roll for their 4 emissary board right on the spot. Trying to pivot your board to emissary here is a doomed cause. In 25 gold, you need to find Garen 2, you need to find Swain 2, your 4 emissaries, including 1 copy of Mbessa, and unless you find LeBlanc and Elise, you're probably not going to have a stronger board than this. So instead, at the end of his roll down, the player realizes that this is the board they have to sit on, and this is their highest possible chance of top 4ing. From here, you can see how he navigates the rest of the game. He plays around this Swain and this Zyra, which I think is really cool. Zyra 2 is already very strong, but he has Experiment in, and he has a reason to play Experiment because Mundo is strong, and that causes this Zyra to do a lot of damage. So obviously not in this fight because she is Zephyr, but even after Zephyr, she does 5k. As we continue along to watch other fights, you can see that this Zyra is not a fluke, and she's consistently doing 6 to 5k damage. In this fight, she does 5k and Swain does around 3k. Keep in mind that Zyra is at 1 cost while Swain's at 2 cost. Here we high roll a LeBlanc because we are like second pick and no one takes it, but high rolls are just part of the game. This high rolling LeBlanc doesn't take away from his skill expression on stage 4, 1 to 4, 3, because if he didn't have this idea to play around this board and stabilize, he would have a much lower HP, a much weaker board, and I highly doubt that even this LeBlanc would be able to save him. On stage 4, 5, he hits his Mundo 2, he rolls down again. I think at this point he just commits to Black Rose, but I can see that I think he was waiting for the potential for maybe Experiment line here. Maybe if you high roll like a Warwick, I think that'd be really strong, playing around 5 Experiment, 5 Experiment, 4 Sorcs. Just a generally strong board if you have the Warwick plus the +1 Experiment. And finally, let's look at near the end game. So remember, he was 38 HP and about to go bot 4. A couple rounds along, it's 5-2, and now he's second place in terms of HP, and he's won pretty much all the rounds he's faced. We get to 5-4 after his first loss against the super capped Renata player, and his board is looking very strong now. He's at 25 HP, but he's won so many fights that he's at level 8 with 55 gold. Maybe after 6-1, he can go level 9 and play around this Malzahar as his level 9. I think in this spot, you can also cap around Mordekaiser if you hit, and possibly other units like another Black Rose unit if you don't have 5 costs. Obviously, 6 costs are great as well. I'm not going to spoil his actual placement, but I can guarantee you it's a really good spot. And if you want to watch the full VOD again, head over to Mercurial's channel. I'll have the link below. But you can see how in a spot that most people would assume is doomed, he flexes his strongest board and actually manages to get to level 9. So the final board I want to show is the 4 Form Swapper variation, which clearly you can't hit without the early Jace. But I want to put this one out there because I think it's a strong cap out and something you should capitalize on if you find the early Jace. So again, this is a level 8 board, even though it shows level 9 here. It's just counting the Scion or the Hex tech. So that means that your level 9 can be a Nunu or another Black Rose unit. I like playing another Bruiser because when you have Swain backline and you have no Garen, you kind of lack frontline, so you really want Elise to have all her frontline traits enabled. There's probably 100 different variations you can play around Sorcs in general, but for the 4 Form Swapper, you can add a Vi for Pit Fighter at 9, a Vi 2 with the TG is always very strong, a Savika works as well, Mordekaiser fits, and obviously a 6 cost will always work. If you have a +1, you can fit in 6 Sorc at level 9 as well. So finally, at the end, I want to go over one normal Sorc game where I roll at 7, so you guys have a clear example of when to roll at 4-2 versus level 7. So in this one, I kind of want to emphasize my stage 2 as well, my stage 1, because I kind of want to show players when they should aim towards Sorc in the first place. So I think you recognize at this point, you already have 3 components by 1-3, that it's going to be a 5 component opener, so having a lot of components can help in this comp because you have to itemize Swain, another backliner, and your Garen. So I take a item grab bag as my first augment, and I get Nashers. I think there's an angle where I could probably reforge the Nashers and dupe this Nocturne in my shop, maybe play around some sort of Nocturne high tempo into either ambushers or maybe a scrap game, but I'm not too confident in that line, so I decided to just play around the Nashers and make a Shojin plus Nashers combo. Now with this Shojin Nashers plus this lesser dupe, I really want to play towards two lines. Either Renata, which as you can see that guy is contesting me on, or towards a Swain 2. Lesser dupe is huge. I think it's very useful when you want to play towards a 2-star 3 cost. Oh, and this is something I quickly want to mention before I forget. Uh, the 4 conk into Sorc is a great idea because at the 100 stack cash out for conk, you get a free lesser dupe, which can help you either get that 3-star Sorc or 3-star Swain or that 2-star Swain. Very strong, and if you see a spot for it, definitely go for it. So on 2-3, I high roll a Swain in my shop, and I know you guys like. I know you guys don't want to watch high roll games all the time, but this is it. But this is important for this spot because you should be playing this from a win streak. And if you don't high roll, you cannot win streak your stage 2. So this is a great spot to play towards Sorc when you have that Swain early and you have that lesser dupe. So my spot is looking really good right now. And if I find a Swain before 3-2, I can probably streak all the way to stage 4. And I have a high chance of finding one on carousel as well. Although I'm going to be last pick, so I really doubt they're going to let me take it. You can see that I, instead of making 10 here because I want to hold GP, I have this Swain. I instead sell these units and push levels instead because I want a higher rarity shop next turn. So I pre-level there, and I look for. I'm pushing pretty aggressively for this Swain potential. You can see that pushing to pre-leveling to 5 nets me a 4 cost and a couple 3 costs and 2 costs, but not the ones I want. We get to level 5 here, and I'm gonna just slam a belt plus leave rod open. You can see I leveled to 6 here as well because I kind of want to beat the Windstreaker, and I have a unit to put in, which is my Tristana. Gives me a 6% attack speed on my Shojin Swain. And also I want to, again, increase my shot odds for the Swain potential. Skipping to 3-3, you can see that my conk stacks are going to give me a 2-star 2 cost soon, so I want to take advantage of the fact I'm getting more money, so push even more aggressively. So again, no Swain on this carousel, I think. Yeah, no Swain on this carousel, but I do get a Swain. So I do push level 7 here, and I have 40 gold about, but I do buy my entire shop and roll, I think, once here, and I get a Swain. So again, this is a great time to 3-5 it and go to level 7. As you can see that I have a lot of upgrades I can potentially hit. I have a 4 Watcher potential. I have like 4 Sorc potential. I have a free slot here because I can't play 2 Emissaries. So I have Swain reason, very high chance because I technically have 2 Swains. GP upgrade, potential Watcher, and literally anything over this Triss is better. So if I can spike my board and I have a high chance of doing so, then I should definitely do it. Especially when you have a 7 streak and you really want to push tempo. So I find this Swain 2 and I dupe it immediately and I just play my strongest board. I do remember not building my strongest board here because I forget that I have a Watcher in my shop and I play like a Zyra instead of a Triss here. But yeah, that's a mistake. I amend next turn. And this lets me streak all of stage 2 and stage 3, minus that one round I lost on the very start of the game. So we'll kind of see how this game develops. What I really want to highlight is my stage or my early game. Late game, I'll show you how I kind of cap out. I think I play around this guarantee. I roll a bit more on 4-2. I think that might have been a mistake. I think I should have waited till 4-5 because I'm kind of low on money. But I build my best items I can. I got like off this Wolves, I'll show you that I got dropped some really, really bad components. So I got dropped bow, sword, rod. Looks pretty bad, but I think if you make it into a Giant Slayer, Rage Blade, and a Gunblade, it's not the worst. I chose to level here instead of rolling at 7. I think that's probably more correct, but because I already have the Swain 2, and let's talk about the high roll in a sec, but I think it's correct to roll that or push levels there because I already have this Swain 2, and there's not too much incentive for me to roll at 7 now, right? I already have the Nami 2, and nothing I really want to upgrade my board with is at level 7. I'd rather find higher odds of Garen 2 and LeBlanc like here. Obviously, like I'm not rolling on 8 just because of the LeBlanc chances, but they're there as a bonus and it doesn't hurt, right? So let's acknowledge that high roll and move on. We get to the end game. We're streaking pretty consistently here, and I make the mistake of playing around the Zoe. So I had a Zoe 2, and I'm like, okay, there's no way a 2-star 4 cost is weaker than a 3 cost, right? And it turns out, pretty sure it is, and it doesn't cost me any fights, but I can definitely tell that Swain would be a lot stronger in this spot with these items. So eventually I just sell the Zyra completely I sell the Zoe 2 completely and I figure out my strongest board, which is this. So I play 4 Emissary and 4 Sorc. So because Elise is always so contested, I don't have Elise 2 here, but that's not too bad because I have my tank, and Elise's job is mainly just to to cast once, stun the enemy team, and just kind of die. I make a mistake here, the one I mentioned earlier in this video about not putting Sunfire and Spark on the right units. Like Spark was on Elise before, but I used 2 removers to kill it, and now that mistake cost me a lot here because of doing that, I grabbed a Nami off Carousel so I could put the QSS on LeBlanc and have an item for my Swain 3 or potentially Swain 3. But because I realized that I have no removers left because I had to use Burn 2 swapping these back, I can't do that. So either I need to sell a LeBlanc here to move items to here and put the QSS on this unit, or I need to reforge this. Or I need to wait 2 turns and potentially lose a lot of HP here. I'm pretty positive that if I have a Giant Slayer on my Swain 3 here, I win this fight, but unfortunately I do lose here because I have an item on bench. And this causes me to realize that, okay, it's not worth it. I'm going to sell this LeBlanc and just put my items on this Swain. Although I do think in hindsight I should have just reforged the QSS or reforged the QSS and keep the LeBlanc because I want to push levels and find LeBlanc 2 here. In this spot, I think it's always correct to push levels here because I don't have items for this Nami, and I don't have the HP to sit around and wait for a full item Nami, right? I'm getting 1 item here. I get 1 item for Nami, but to get 2 more items, I need to find another carousel and fight another PvE round. If anything, this QSS needs to be reforged. I think I just have way too much attack speed on this unit. I want like at least 1 damage. Yeah. Either Nashor's onto you or Archangel's onto LeBlanc or vice versa. So yeah, this guy's really capped out. He's a Renata player that beat me last time, and he's got like Infectious Anomaly that's been stacking since stage 4-7. Even without good Swain items, I managed to top 2 this lobby. So at this point, I recognize that there's like no hope of me beating him, so I pushed to level 9, rolled down, managed to find LeBlanc, but again, this guy's board is insanely capped out. I think if I had if I played my stage 4 slightly better, rolled on 4-5 instead, and pushed to 9 directly, and had better items on Swain, I could potentially win this fight. But his board is incredibly well balanced. He's got the Visionary, he's got Best in Slot Morgana, he's got perfect item Rel and perfect item Alawi. I'm sure he has some broken Anomaly as well. He just has way too many items, and he got the Heimer too as well. So, but again, the important part is the early game about when to aim towards this Sorc comp, how to capitalize on the tempo, and when to roll for Swain 3 and stay at 7 versus when to go to 8 and when to push to 9. Hopefully this video taught you a lot and changes the way you think about Sorc. If you enjoyed this type of content, leave a like and a comment to help the algorithm, and if you want to see more, consider subscribing. I'll see you guys in the next one.